Hello and welcome back to the Indian Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Raj Balkaran. Today we're going to talk about Shiva's blue throat. Why does Shiva, Mahadeva, the great god, the great destroyer, who dances destruction at the end of the age in his cosmic dance of bliss, why does Shiva, the primordial yogi, the lord of beasts, dweller of the Himalayas, husband of Parvati, why does Shiva have a blue throat? Nilakanta. It's one of his great epithets. The blue-throated one, Nilakanta. Why? How did that happen? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because I can tell you the story of how that happened. Many of you listening may well be familiar with a very famous and, to my mind, really powerful tale of when the demons and gods, the devas and the asuras, worked together. Yes, they work together, but yes, there's always friction between them. So even in working together, there's friction, but they harness that friction, the push pull, to churn. What did they churn? The celestial ocean, the cosmic expanse, the Milky Way itself. And why did they churn it? In search for the elixir of life everlasting, which they knew to be buried deep in the folds of the cosmic ocean. That which is most highly coveted, most refined, most precious is not readily available, is it? Part of its preciousness is the effort that one needs to exhaust in order to procure it. So the demons and the gods, they set aside their age-old feud to work together, and working together and collaborating and cooperating, nevertheless, was back and forth and push and pull. But sometimes we can leverage creative tensions. We may have partners who are of different bents, one an introvert, one an extrovert, one fairly emotional, one fairly walled, one an outdoorsy person, the other sort of a homebody. And yet there might be a way to leverage the push and pull. Hey, honey, how about we go to a ski resort and you go ski while I curl up by this lovely fire and drink hot cocoa? What do you say, darling? Right? So creative tensions are very useful in life. But this very famous pushing and pulling, turning the primordial oceans, involved a great many iconic items and beings. Um, Mount Mandara was used as a churning pole. The great serpent Vasuki lent his body to be wrapped around the mountain to be used as a churning rope. And Vishnu himself transformed himself into a tortoise, into his Kurma avatara. Why? So he could scuttle to the bottom of the sea, the ocean, and have the churning take place literally on his back. The churning for the elixir of life occurred on the back of Vishnu himself, in his Kurma avatara, in his tortoise incarnation. And so many of you will be aware of the sheer gripping power of this tale. And as many of you will be aware, the churning was arduous at first. And in time, you see, great riches emerge, great beings and entities and sacred animals. Airavata, Indra's seven-headed elephant, horse, elephant. Who knows? Airavata is an elephant, which I was mistaking for Uchaichravas. A seven-headed horse and a five-headed elephant, and quite charming are the barns of the Vedic skies, indeed. But needless to say, various witches emerge from the churning, and they are sort of divided between the devas and the asuras, and eventually the elixir of life itself emerges. And eventually the elixir is sought by both, because both the gods and the demons never intended to share it. But the demons got there first. And the story is told in greater detail earlier in the podcast series, but I'll just recap some of these salient features now. And the demons get there first, and oh, this is a problem, and Vishnu has to sort of adopt the guise of Mohini infatuation incarnate to infatuate the Daityas so that they may lose sight of or lose interest temporarily in the elixir, and the elixir is usurped by the gods, and there's a great party as the circle of the devas gather and become immortalized one by one with a drop of the ambrosia of life. But there was one demon more cunning than all, Rahu, who snuck into the assembly of the gods in the garb of the gods. But yet he sat between the sun and moon, the bringers of light. And so he was spotted for the pretender that he was. And just as a drop of elixir was about to drop to his tongue, is just as the sun and moon called out to Vishnu that, Vishnu, there is a demon among us. And so Vishnu springs to his feet and launches his Sudarshana chakra across the room towards the neck of Rahu. And Rahu is decapitated precisely as he's immortalized. As a drop of elixir passes his throat, so too is his head severed from his body. And where there was one, there is now two. Duality reigns supreme with Rahu. Rahu is a head without a body, and Ketu is a body without a head. And these two are points in the heavens that are opposite of each other. These are mythologizations of the north node of the moon and the south node of the moon in modern parlance, which are points in space where the orbit of the moon around the earth intersects the orbit of the earth around the sun. And these are points of great tumult, chaos, but potential power if harnessed. Rahu and Ketu, indeed. These literally are the points where eclipses occur. How powerful is that? These are eclipse points. And this mythology is one of where Rahu is angry at the sun and moon for spotting him. Rahu represents shadows. And of course, there's this inimical relationship between dark and light in this myth cycle. And he chases up to the sun, and he catches the sun, and he gobbles the sun. And because he has no body, the sun passes through, solar eclipse. And he chases up to the moon, and he gobbles the moon. And because he has no body, the moon passes through, lunar eclipse. And he chases up to the sun, etc., etc., etc. This is the dance of shadow and light, of the two luminaries and the two nodes, which we find in our system, in our solar system. Stunningly fascinating myth. But I sort of told you the last part first, because unlike the previous tellings where we focused on that, today we want to focus on the very first part, in which Shiva is most greatly and gloriously implicated. Right? So the demons and the Daityas, Daitya are children of Diti division. There are two kinds of people in the world, those who bring us together and those who divide us. And those who divide us, they don't care. They will exist on all ends of the political spectrum. They will be gay, straight, bi, tri. They will be black, white, brown, blue, purple, green. These things don't matter. Demons come in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes they're even our own family members. But their goal is to divide us, and divide us they do. And when we fall prey to them, we are poisoned. And there are those who are here to bring us together one way or another. Yes. And so the Daityas and the Devas, at odds but collaborating, leveraging and harnessing their push-pull for the sake of churning for the elixir of life. They're working hard to churn the thick cosmic ocean. Like all worthwhile endeavors, the churning was at first arduous. The ocean was dense and thick as an unplowed field in the wilderness. It scarcely relented to the toiling. Without warning, and after a handful of heaves to and fro, the ocean emitted a vile indigo-colored poison high into the heavens above. Both Devas and Daityas gasped at the crude substance, launched into the air, as it began to descend upon them, for they knew that such descent could only bring their demise. For they have not yet been immortalized, so they are mortal, and therefore potentially imperiled by the poisons of life. What an ironic fate indeed, to be poisoned in pursuit of immortality. All eyes were on the poison, including the eye of Shiva. Which eye of Shiva? His left eye or his right eye? The right eye in Vedic thought is solar. The left eye is lunar. Was it the left eye or the right eye? Neither, both. Perhaps it was his third eye, his Agnya chakra, his mind's eye, which once awakened has the power to see through time and space. So time and space are governed by the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. In that very order, pardon me, there's a chakra associated with each element. Mula, Dhara, root chakra with the earth element. Swadhisthana, your sacral chakra, with the water element. Makes sense, I suppose. The chakra number 3 in the pit of your stomach, fire in your belly, fire element. Chakra number 4, the Anahata, the heart, air element. And chakra number 5, the voice box. Not physically. This is when I point to these centers in your subtle body, in your sukshma sharira. But chakra number 5, around the voice, is ether, and that makes perfect sense because ether is the medium of sound. And where does sound come from? Your voice box. Shabda. Even if you are chanting a mantra beneath your breath and there is no physical sound, you can still feel the vibration. That's ether. The vibration is occurring in ether, just as radio waves can transmit space, independent of atmosphere or air proper. Right. But past door number 5, you have door number 6. That is the Agnya chakra. So, if all of the chakras are associated with an element, what is the Agnya chakra associated with? The transcendence of the elemental. What do you mean? Well, the elements are the constituents of time-space, this sort of 4-dimensional plane that we inhabit as human beings. And so with the purview of the Agnya, one can see across space, not just in one's own vicinity. One can see, one has Duradarshina, remote viewing power. Okay. Not just across space, but one has the power to see across time. A sixth sense of what is to come, foreknowledge of what is to ripen. Now, arguably, no one has pristine foreknowledge, even the greatest of rishis, because not everything is decided. One can only see what exists, and elements of the future which exist, i.e., drida karma, that which is ripening and must ripen as destiny, is unavoidable, can be seen for those who have the eyes to see it, and for those futures which do not exist because they are entirely dependent upon the path that you choose, to choose your adventure, so to speak. Those things cannot be seen, only in potentia. Cool. So Shiva, whose third eye is fully awake, is able to see the scene. Scene, SEEN, SCENE, whatever. He can see the scene from sea to shining sea. And he sees that the celestials are imperiled. And what does he do? He snaps his fingers, teleports himself to the scene, having interrupted his cosmic meditation, to swiftly disembark. Why? Because he's the great destroyer. What destroyer? He's going to destroy them. They're already being destroyed. Wait, listen, just listen. The negatives cancel out. What do you mean? What happens when you destroy something destructive? You end up protecting and preserving. I will say that one more time, especially for black and white thinkers and or those indoctrinated by Abrahamic ideology. What happens when you destroy something destructive? You end up preserving, protecting it. So, knowing that no one can withstand the potency of the oceanic toxins, Shiva graced the scene, opened his mouth, and allowed the poison to enter his mouth. The Daityas and the Devas reeled in both relief, followed immediately by alarm. Would the great Shiva sacrifice himself in order to save the universe? If so, what dreadful fate would ensue? They all knew that he had a very important role to play, above and beyond his role with Parvati as consort and his children Ganesha and Kartikeya, above and beyond the tapasya, the garner of ascetic power, above and beyond the conference of boons and some divine decapitation hither and thither. At the end of the age, he's to perform his dance of transcendental bliss, his Ananda Tandava, annihilating the age so that all may be dissolved back into the very primordial oceans. And he's done this for countless creations before. And he needs to do this for countless creations to come. But what if he's destroyed in this very creation? Then what? All eyes looked on in awe as the poison entered the mouth of Lord Shiva. To their surprise, he did not swallow it. What did he do with it? All were perplexed by the fact that he also did not spit it out. Did he swallow it or did he spit it out? Did he swallow it or did he spit it out? Yes, no, maybe. Find a third option, folks. Find a third option. His throat turned deep blue because he lodged the cosmic venom in that divine throat of his. And from that day on, he was called Nilakanta, he whose throat is blue, honoring the fact that he neutralized the poisons of life with his ascetic power. Hail Shiva Mahadeva Nilakanta. Praise be to you. Chanted the demons and the gods. Glory, glory, hallelujah, Mahadeva. Hail to the Lord of Yogis, the blue-throated one. Shiva was copiously praised because he had done his duty to dispense his divine grace. And yes, my dears, at times grace looks precisely like destruction. Having been purified of its dreadful poisons, the ocean began to flow more freely, and they kept up the churning. What was once crude became refined, and reached each swivel of Mount Mandara, as mentioned before, greater and greater riches emerge from the celestial oceans. Right? Actually, the moon itself was churned from this very cosmic churning. So great was their effort, and so refined became the ocean that it bestowed upon them a resplendent orb of cool delight. The moon itself, therefore, was born. Because of his colossal feat, the moon was offered at the feet of Lord Shiva, who embraced it and donned it amid his matted locks. So captivating was the radiance of the sight. The entire celestial assembly paused to admire the newly born moon. Right? The cobra adorns Shiva as his sacred garland. His blue throat is a symbol of auspiciousness and power, showing that while power can be dangerous, it need not be malevolent. The cobra is also a symbol of rising Kundalini Shakti, spiritual power, divine energy that travels up the subtle spine, the secret fire, if you will. Once it reaches the crown, one is awakened, or at least one's Shakti is awakened. There are those who have their consciousness awakened. There are those who have their Shakti awakened. There are those who have both awakened. And there are those who have neither awakened. Which one are you? To which extent? That's the question. Number 5 is some combination. The cobra's ability to stand up tall, unique among snake species, represents the unique capacity of the human spine to occupy a fully upright posture. When the Kundalini energy at the base of the spine is awakened during spiritual practice, it dredges up the poisonous crud we need to address. Upon consistent growth, the Shakti, the power, the energy yields riches even more refined than the last, of which this great churning is a profound metaphor. The immortals have much to learn from the power of Lord Shiva. Shiva Nilakanta, that is, the blue-throated Lord. If we fail to learn the lesson of Shiva, we will either swallow and internalize the poison. How many of you have been in a toxic situation with a lover, with a spouse, with a boss, and you've gotten sick, emotionally sick, and quite often physically sick? Some maladies of the body come from the external world. You broke your leg, you got a cut. Yes. And some come from the body itself. Sometimes, okay, look, you've eaten 1,000 hamburgers, and this is having an effect on your arteries, etc., etc. Or we don't know where this tumor came from. Well, yes, we do. It came from malignant emotion. It came from your Manamaya kosha. That doesn't mean that it need not be treated on the level of the food body, the Anamaya kosha. Of course it does. But if you don't solve the underlying emotional cause, it will return. So we either swallow the poisons of life or we spit them out, that's toxins of our experiences. What kind of state would we enjoy if we were free of both of these? If we damage neither self nor other with this toxicity? What kind of our state would our world be if unsullied by venom? Shiva is a potent example of neutralizing the poisons of life. Thus, he safeguards self and others. And to my mind, he therefore makes for a profound spiritual exemplar of a way to be in the world, if possible. So, this is why Shiva has a blue throat. And this is why it's called Nilakanta. I hope that you've enjoyed these teachings and this tale. Feel free to reach out with requests, comments, anything at all. And I welcome you to come study with me at IndianWisdomSchool.com. Maybe even see me in person at one of the international retreats this year. All right. Take good care of yourself. Until next time. Namaste.